Hello X. I have something that might be of interest to you. It concerns what my team and I found under the Great Sphinx in the Egyptian city of Giza. I know the first question that you'll ask me is why would we ever go searching underneath a place like that, and for what possible purpose? I will keep it brief for you. Have you ever heard of an American author by the name of John Anthony West? Did you know that during the early 90s, he and a team of archaeologists carried out a series of seismological and geological tests around the Great Sphinx? The results of his tests caught everyone's attention, ours especially. His tests revealed the existence of unexplored tunnels in the bedrock beneath the monument. His team was subsequently thrown out of the site by Egyptian authorities. We got involved around this time. Who we are is of no importance. At least, not to you anyway. You wouldn't even know who we are. The only thing that I will mention to you is the obvious. We are a group with some sort of connection to the United States government, and were assigned this task due to a certain degree of knowledge and expertise that we possess. Greentext will begin from here, in order to make the events that happen a little easier for you to follow. We received our mission and arrived in Giza during the summer of 1995. We were tasked with excavation and transport by the local government, told to recover whatever we possibly could from the tunnels beneath the Sphinx by the US government. Local officials feigned ignorance at the possibility of tunnels or valuables underneath the Sphinx. I had an assistant assigned with me to the task. Let's call him Josh. Josh is complaining about a lack of information. He is seriously worried about being sent in blind and the dangers that we might encounter. I tell him to calm down. Tell him that the mission will go smoothly and that there's probably just some gems or treasure down there at most. We arrive shortly there at the monolith. Can see the pyramids of Giza just beyond it, partially covered up by a thick layer of fog and dust. I pull out a cigarette before we head in, and I ask Josh if he's shitting himself yet. Tells me he has a bad feeling about the mission, but I dismiss it once again. Thinks that the mission can't be as straightforward as it seems. Otherwise, why hire us? I just shrug at him. Money is money. I don't care what we have to do. It's all the same to me. Senior seismologist runs over to us and tells us that we are finally good to go. They've managed to break through. Josh asks him if they managed to take a look down below. He tells us he caught a small glimpse and that the chamber seemed empty. Empty? Ask him what he means. Tells me they didn't see anything down there at all. No urns, no gold, no valuables. No nothing. Just 4 walls. What the fuck? I guess at least the job will be easy. Ask him if he thinks someone beat us to it and took everything before we could get there. Tells me it is unlikely, but stranger things have happened. I just nod and say that we better get it over with. We suited up in full hazmat suits just in case and made our way over to the base of the Sphinx. We were also equipped with an industrial flashlight each. I approached the gaping drill hole near the statue's right paw. I got down into a sitting position and then began climbing down using a rope ladder. Josh is close behind me. Immediately hit by a wall of darkness. My feet hit the ground and I turn on my flashlight as fast as I possibly can. It was exactly as he said. Fucking empty. I was just standing in the middle of this vast cavern-like space, with nothing of value at all to be seen. The place was quite large, and the hollowness of the subterranean space made every movement amplified in sound, and made them seem incredibly strange and eerie. There was a steady stream of sand, trickling from a small crack in the ceiling. I decided that it was best not to linger, and finish our job as quickly as possible. I told Josh to move his ass and get into gear. As we explored further in, We noticed a lot of iconography on the walls that was worn heavily by the passage of time. The usual Egyptian stuff really. Depictions of Ra, the Eye of Horus, even portrayals of Osiris and Thoth were all across the walls. It looked like they were telling a story of some kind. Anubis, emblazoned across the wall, judging the souls of the dead, with displays of all sorts of monsters along the width of it too. Josh starts to speak up to get my attention. Tells me to come and take a look at what he's found. Josh is just standing there, with his flashlight raised towards a wall at the far end of the chamber. On the wall, there was another icon, a god I had never seen before in my life. Below it was the lid of a sarcophagus. It was standing upright against the wall, and looked to be embedded within the sandstone itself. Perhaps this place was a tomb. Decided to go over and check out the find. I wasn't really worried about anything at the time. It was likely just empty anyway, and I was just checking to be sure. Started to notice more details once I got closer to it. The design of the coffin was not like a typical Egyptian one that you'd see in a history book at all. The design of the coffin was human in the face, but it had feline-shaped paws folded over its body. The design really irked me for some reason, and I could not figure out why at all. It seemed to be somewhat similar to the iconography that it was placed underneath, but I couldn't say for sure whether they were the same. If it was a coincidence, it was definitely a strange one. I placed my gloved hand over the lid and leaned in closer to inspect the details. The wall had molded itself around the coffin. It was fit around it like a cast. Josh speaks up again. He asked me what I'm doing. I replied back sarcastically, and he told me to be careful and that he was worried. I started telling him to go home if he was going to be such a coward. Just as I finished my sentence, I felt a surge of pain shooting through my head. I almost bit my tongue. It hurt so bad. It felt as if someone had driven a dagger deep into my brain and just kept pushing and pushing on it. The pain just kept amplifying until it was overwhelming. I stepped back, fully consumed by the pain that was shooting throughout my body. I started clawing at my hazmat suit in vain, hoping that tearing it off might relieve some of the pain. I could not escape, no matter what I did. I wish I'd died. That is how unbearable the pain was. I lost my balance completely and hit the ground hard. I could hear the slow motion vibrations on the ground as I assumed that Josh rushed over to me. All I could do was squirm on the ground and hope for it to go away. The last thing I saw was the outline of Josh as my vision started to fade to black. He tried to reach out to me, but I could not respond, no matter how hard I tried. He picked up my radio and was frantically trying to contact someone. I woke up, kind of. I woke up to pure blackness. Like, I felt conscious and awake, but I could only see pure black. Time seemed to shift for me once I woke up. I could not tell how much time had passed or what was going on at all. All I had was an infinite blackness. It was barren and lifeless, with no sounds at all. It was maddening. The seconds just seemed to go on forever, as my vision drifted in and out of focus until I finally saw my saving grace. I could see a light in the distance. It wasn't just one light. There was a multitude of them. They seemed to be as bright as stars in the night sky, except they were incredibly close to me. I did not realize it until that moment, when I noticed their gleam reflecting back off of it. I was suddenly standing in water. A massive expanse of knee-deep water, seemingly out of nowhere. I looked down, back at myself again, just to confirm that I was really there and actually real. I needed to know whether I was hallucinating or not. I was also completely fucking nude for no reason at all. There were waves of warm water hitting my thighs and my entire body relentlessly. My moment of respite lasted for only a moment. before I was thrown back into action once again. It was a voice here with me in whatever this place was. It was not Josh. It was a stranger. No one from the site or the medical team. He was old, incredibly old. His face was covered with an array of scars and wrinkles that combined together. He was the same height as me, maybe even slightly taller. It was hard to tell at the time due to the haziness of my mind and the deception of the water. His body was incredibly built. He had the body of an athlete in his prime and showed no wear and tear at all. He was wearing some strange clothes, ones that I had never seen before. A tunic, I think it looked like, pure white. The most striking thing about his appearance, though, was the wolf pelt that hung around his neck that he wore like a scarf. The animal's skull sat atop his shoulder, like he was fucking Hercules and had just slain the beast himself. I finally managed to stutter out some words and ask him who the fuck he was and what he was doing in a cordoned off dig site. There was absolutely no way that he should have been able to get down here with all these workers surrounding the site. Unless he'd been down here before we got here. The old man just sighed and stared deep into my soul. Every move he made had me on edge. He told me that I had invaded his temple, ransacked it, and then made a mockery of him by not knowing his name. I just stood there, speechless. It was like I was getting scolded by my mom and dad. For some reason, I felt like I should apologize, even though I had no idea what I had done wrong. He cut me off before I could even speak though. He told me his name, but I didn't really know how to pronounce it. I think he said something like wet, but I've never heard of that before. He told me that his brother was the famous one. I asked him where I was, but he just asked me where I thought I was. I only had a vague idea that I really hoped was wrong. I asked him if I was dead. He told me no. He told me that the afterlife was only for the deserving. He brought his hands out from behind his back and made a twirling motion with his finger that forced me to turn around against my will. He told me to watch carefully and study what he was going to show me. He told me that it was my doing. I could only watch in horror as I saw something towering in the distance, a Titanic-sized figure. He was showing me a creature of impossible stature, probably the size of a city, maybe even bigger. I really couldn't tell. It was so large that my brain could not comprehend it properly. Its sheer size just made my brain hurt. There were bronze chains cutting into the creature's hide, and metal rods too. Its paws were nailed to a platform and stopped it from moving. Its fur was like a forest along its body. I can't even begin to describe its face. Just dwelling on its image, looking at it, it made my brain spiral and turn straight into flight mode. Its existence was like a black hole to my mind. The men started to speak again, asking me what I thought of the creature. Again, he cut me off before I could respond, describing the creature as beautiful. He told me that the creature had been the same since he first encountered it. He still withers and grows old, but the creature never ages. I tried to cover my eyes, but my hands were trembling too much to be able to move them. It was then, looking down at my shaking hands, that I noticed that the water I was stood in was not actually water. It had changed color. The water was a murky red. I asked if it was the blood of the creature. I asked him how it could still be alive if it had lost so much blood, but all he did was shush me. He told me that I asked too many questions, that all I do is ask and give nothing in return. I tried to ask another question, but before I could, one of the chains holding down the beast snapped suddenly. Both pieces of the chain fell to the ground and caused the entire place to shake. which nearly knocked me off my feet and into the liquid that I was stood in. One by one, each shackle began to snap and fall to the ground. The sight was horrifying. "It is going to devour you all," was the only words that the man said to me. He said it so casually, like it was no big deal at all, like it was going to happen no matter what. I asked him what was going to happen, if he could kill it, if we could kill it. He told me that he already had, again and again, a countless number of times. He told me that the creature always comes back each time, stronger than ever, and that he grows weaker and weaker as time passes. That is what this place was for. It was the tomb trapping the creature, so that when he finally lost to the creature, it still could not make its way out and onto Earth. He told us that we ruined that when we drilled our holes and stepped foot into this place. He showed me more images of the sarcophagus we had found, being loaded onto a truck to take back to the US for study. It had not yet been opened. I asked the man what I needed to do. There was something like a white flash, and the next thing I knew, I was awake once again. For real this time. I was lying in my tent, sprawled out completely, with Josh pacing nervously beside me. He was relieved to see me conscious again. I immediately went into a frenzy, explaining that the sarcophagus needed to be put back this instant, and that I would explain after I made a full report back to base. He was completely shocked at this sudden reaction, but he and the rest of the workmen on the site complied without any resistance. I made a full, in-depth report the first second I could. I was expecting to be laughed out of my role and dealt with accordingly, but nothing of the sort happened. I was given a strict set of orders, which I followed to the letter, and within 12 hours, a team was dispatched to us. Another team dropped by, one I had never seen or heard of before, and all of the workmen and me and Josh were escorted off of the site. We were sent back home and deployed to another mission, and I never heard anything about the sarcophagus again. I couldn't exactly just ask about something confidential like that. Josh was transferred shortly afterward. He was relatively new, so it did not shock me all that much. Never heard from him again after that. I could not help but wonder where he ended up. I also couldn't help but wonder what they did with that sarcophagus, or whether they ever believed me and just opened it up anyway. I suppose the world hasn't ended yet, so there is that at least. Maybe they found another way to contain it, or maybe they found some other secrets. Sorry that I don't really have any more information than that, X. This is a difficult story to recall for me, and it all felt way too real. I guess it's possible that I just imagined it all, but that would not explain why our superiors acted so hastily. I don't know. I don't think I'll ever find any concrete answers. I stayed in my role for a few more years after that, but I became jaded quite quickly and opted to step into a less intensive role before eventually retiring. I have a lot more other experiences to tell you about, but they mostly just involve exploring catacombs for artifacts and killing certain targets, which I might have to heavily censor just in case. Any questions you have, I will try my best to answer. Not really spooky, but strange somehow, bordering the lines of human sanity, I think. To preface, I work in the police force in a small EU East Bloc country, and I have a few stories to share. Bugman. 2018. I am a 29-year-old male. February. The capital of the East Bloc country. Edge of town, not the outskirts. Known to be a big ghetto back from 2001, when flood destroyed their natural habitat downtown. Patrol the streets in car with partner. 2 a.m., empty streets. Kinda boring really, no action. And I remember getting sleepy, just about ready to get back for a break. Suddenly get a district call on the radio from Station Inspector of the night. Yup, we're listening. Get back to the station. There is a weird guy here. Inspector is on the station alone in the night, so sometimes people come at 2 a.m. to report their car getting jacked, etc. Usually, these people have problems, either in the head, alcohol, or drugs, etc. Got it. I turn on the police lights and double time it back to the station to help the inspector. Get to the station, open the main doors, and it is dark inside. Only light I remember in the waiting room, where people wait to get their turn, is light from the vending machine. The guy sits there. White, thin guy, old clothes, bald spot on his head, and his look is kinda out there. He scratches his neck from time to time. Warning bells start ringing in my head. The guy looks at me, not saying anything, and I don't say anything either. Shake head, and go to the inside room to the inspector. What's up with that guy? Yeah, Inspector shrugs. What does he want? Dunno. You ask him. I just let him in, but he's fishy, so I will leave this one to you. Inspectors are usually just the kinds of clerk white-collar cops who just handle reports on the station and relay info to the outside patrols, etc. They also work 24-hour shifts, so this guy just doesn't have the temper to deal with some nut job. Go to the guy with my partner. Hey, what's the problem? He scratches behind his neck and stands up. He is really short. No danger in the regard of fighting him, but still get really bad vibes from him. I got bugs in my apartment, he says. So, call the exterminator to get rid of them. You really go to a police station at 2 a.m. to report this? Well, I need you to take a look. Seemed like a waste of time to me, and my partner shook his head at me. But I just got this weird feeling to check it with him. He clearly was not right in the head, and something could be up in his flat. Alright, we will take a look. We go with him to our car and seat him in the back seat with my partner beside him. Go to the address. Go to the apartment. He unlocks the door and waits. Get a flashlight. Open the door. The flat is old style, as if from the 50s. Commie country that time. Stale murky air, but nothing weird. Turn on lights in the hallway and get left to what looks like a bedroom. Shine my flashlight on what looks like a bed. Jumping and instant movement of a black tide of what looks like millions of bugs on the bed. Take 3 steps out of the room in terror, but have to check it anyway. Could be a dead body or something like that. Turn on the room lights. The bugs look like bed bugs and scatter inside of a bed as the lights turn on. No stench of a dead body though, and the room is unkept. Not filthy, just unkept. Dust on everything. Overflow garbage bin with other bugs crawling out. The guy is behind me and scratches his neck. See? Of course I see. Check the room for foul play. Find nothing. Just bugs everywhere. Check other rooms, which are surprisingly fine. Another bedroom that looks fine. Unused though. Tell him, anyway, nothing for police. Call an exterminator or something, I say, as we prepare to get out. Or use the other bedroom. Can't use that one. Mother died there a few weeks back. So you use the bug-infested one instead. He scratches his neck. Nothing for police here. Have a nice day. We get out and report to Inspector, then resume our patrol of the streets. 4 a.m. We drive past Metro Station. Bugman stands there, outside of the station. Nobody is around. He watches our car drive by slowly. Get to station again and check car. Find a few bed bugs inside where he sat. Get the car professionally cleaned. He was like a comic villain, or like that guy from the MIB. Not paranormal, but weird shit happens in our heads sometimes. Hello X. I have a story from a few years ago, when I was working a different Wagie job. Be me. Work at Subway, in one of those road trip stopping points in middle of nowhere Kansas that only has us, a McDonald's, and a shithole motel. Making the 40-minute drive home from work. Have to go through backwoods roads, between fields of corn. Not a single light, so it's dark as hell. Windows down, blasting new Cage album over the wind, and enjoying the drive home as usual. Speeding, because nobody is on this road in the day, much less at night, and no troopers to worry about when off the interstate. 20 minutes in, and my shitbox's headlights reveal a car in the middle of the road. Oh fuck. Barely able to swerve because I'm speeding. Narrow miss. Brake hard. Stop a few meters ahead of the car. Turn off car and poke head out of car. Call out a hello? Silence. Fish through my glove box for flashlight and get out of car. Turn on flashlight. It's ass, so I still can't see much further than 6 feet in front of me. Walk to car. Call out again, but still get nothing. Reach car. A nice sedan with driver's door open. Front hood caved in, and windshield cracked a bit, like it hit a deer. Poke head inside and shine flashlight around. It is basically empty. Look back at hood. Damage is pretty bad, and see some blood. Look at road. Flashlight makes blood on the asphalt glisten, so I can see a trail go off the road. Figure that whoever hit the deer dragged it out into the corn to hide it to avoid a fine. Walk up to the edge of the field and yell out. Driver probably would want help getting back to civilization instead of walking in the dark. Hear something further in the field. Sounds like a reply, but I can't understand it. The corn is flattened where deer got dragged through it. I take a few steps in. Immediately have flight or fight trigger. Hair on end, and goosebumps pop up all over my skin. Not a pussy or afraid of corn, so I go a bit further in and call out again. Hear a yell much closer, like 20 feet in front of me closer. Freeze, and point flashlight forward. Light catches eyes close to the ground, further down the trail of flattened corn. Eyes quickly rise up high enough to be a head or two taller than the corn stalks. Fuck that. Dart out of the cornfield back to the road and jump back in my car. Shitbox takes long enough to start that it feels like a horror movie cliche. Assume that this is where I die until my car finally starts and I take off down the road. I called the police and reported the car when I got home. They called me back and said they didn't find anything the next day. I changed my route home after that. Takes longer, but fuck that road. Not sure if this is paranormal, but it's definitely a scary story that I thought I would share. It's about a buddy of mine I met about 5 years ago, and his experience with being almost kidnapped. Let's call him John. Be John, 2019. Walking home from work at around 1 a.m. Darker area, not many streetlights. Listening to music. Song ends, and there is a pause. Can hear a car, but no headlights. Looks around, and notices a van behind him, about 10 feet away. Van stops. 2 guys jump out, and start to run towards John. John freaks the fuck out, and sprints away. Now, keep in mind, John is far from an athlete, skinny fat at best, and hasn't run a day in his life, so his stamina was basically non-existent, which led to the next part. John realizes these guys are going to catch him. As he's running, he turns the corner, and there is a strip mall with a couple of shops. Guys aren't letting up, and John knows he can't outrun them. John fucking jumps into the front glass window of a Subway. Is torn the fuck up. Legs and arms cut badly from glass. Alarm system goes off. John turns around and sees the guys running off, most likely spooked by the alarm and possible cameras. John gets up and stumbles into the back of the store and hides in the bathroom and locks the door. Starts to pass out from the pain of getting shredded by the glass window. Calls 911 and just says, subway, kidnap, bathroom, and passes out. Wakes up in a hospital. Apparently lost a lot of blood and was lucky not to be dead. Has huge scars on his arms and legs and is mentally broken. Cops reviewed the footage. Didn't see the van because they ran around a corner to get to the strip mall. Did see the two guys' faces though. Later on, John finds out they found one of them, and he was associated with a human trafficking ring. What I should say is John was a goofy, charismatic guy who constantly looked on the bright side of things, regardless of a bad situation. He found silver linings and was always optimistic for a better future. But this event damaged him beyond repair. I was friends with John while all this happened, and although you may think he's lucky to be alive, the incident completely shattered his mind. He initially was okay, but after he found out it was human traffickers or some crazy shit like organ harvesters, he shut down. No more optimism, no silver lining or hopeful for the future. He now looked at life through a cynical and doom-filled lens. John bought a gun and locked himself inside his house for multiple weeks. We had police do welfare checks on him, so we knew that he was alive, and every time he would answer and say he's fine. But he wouldn't talk to his friends, family, job, nothing. Just the cops when they showed up, and there wasn't much else they could do, since he hadn't threatened to take his own life or doing any harm. After a couple weeks, he finally started talking to me, and he told me all of this, and that this whole experience destroyed his mental health, and that every time he sees the scars on his body, he is reminded of the fate that he almost met. Cold, dead eyes, and doesn't laugh or smile, and any time we hang out, he always keeps his right hand by his side next to his gun. That is the new John. Over the years he's gotten better. Doesn't always have his hand on a gun, and occasionally laughs, but he is broken beyond repair. I'm posting this story to help others understand what this kind of shit does to some people. If you ever had a friend or family member go through something so traumatic, stick with them, as hard as it may be. John said if it wasn't for his friends and family support, he would have taken his own life in the 2 weeks that he was in his house.